This July, we headed to the A5 Elite Libero Clinic to experience how one of the top clubs in the country train. Here's where things took a bit of a turn and things got, well, sort of went downhill. Let me preface this by stating I have spoken to followers and players that had attended the setter camp before the Elite Libero session we attended and the tall girls camp after the session we attended that confirmed that they had a great experience at both of those camps. The groups were broken up by players. The coaches knew age and sex because there were not enough males in this particular session to have a court all of their own. With this type of breakdown of the campers, one would assume a few things. Players that are struggling doesn't mean that they are failing. All players should be met and pushed at their levels and then beyond. And the best defensive coaches on the staff is whom you're going to put with those players that are struggling. These coaches that are no joke and take no slack. Well, that kind of didn't happen day two. Let me say that the description held true for the first 3 of 6 courts that were used during that camp. As a matter of fact, I will say that even the youngest court of players, which were the last court, were met where they were because they were about right in their training with the speed of the drills. Day 2 of the training was supposed to be more intense than day 1. It was a major fail for our court. Now, don't get me wrong, there were some coaches that were on some of the other courts that by all means pushed the girls hard enough. And yeah, I know those out there are saying, oh, the girls have to want it too. And I agree 100%. But at this camp, with these coaches, at that price, every one of these coaches should be there driving the machine as well, demanding that every player push past their limits of comfort. That's why it's called elite. And that's why players are coming from around the country to attend. There was a clear distinction of lackluster level with the coaches on this court. What I will say is that the difference I saw with this camp versus other top camps that we've attended is the separation of players. If the separation of players is going to happen due to skill level, which of course I've seen it before, it's not a big deal, the coaches need to be the strongest coaches with the struggling players. That only makes sense to me. So let me use my own daughter as an example. It wasn't that Layla didn't or doesn't know how to pass or defend the ball, but she is a setter. So she was looking to really dig in deep into getting better at passing and defending, focusing on using her legs and having coaches on top of her head for 3 days about the same things that she was doing wrong and how to correcting them and demanding that she correct them. What she got on day 2, however, were coaches babying players, bowling balls in, not giving feedback, didn't want to get on them much or make them cry, or were more so soft-spoken coddlers. Some walked around looking like they didn't want to be there even. I was super frustrated and had to get up and actually leave. Y'all already know that evening I sat down to my laptop and began to write an email to the master coach and CC the owner about how disappointed I was in day 2. I will say that while the email is a bit too long for this particular platform, I know a common request from parents is for the camp or the staff to move the player, but that is not what I actually asked. I actually asked for them to change the coaches. I really didn't feel that Layla needed a court change. She was there to get better at passing and defense. We just wanted harder, tougher, and more disciplined coaches. Well, day 3 comes. It just so happens I spotted Coach A coming out of the bathroom. Okay, I promise I was not stalking this man, but I did introduce myself so that he could put a face with the email from the night before. We spoke for a little bit and parted ways, as he did have to get on with the business of, well, coaching, right? When I come back, I didn't see Layla on the court that she had been on the last 2 days. So I sat down and waited and began to worry just a little bit because she hadn't come back. So I stood up and began to scan the facility, only to see her in the distance on one of the front courts. They had moved her, not the coaches. Here was the funny part about this whole thing. I'm sitting there thinking I'm the only one emailing, right? No, I don't think that was the case. It wasn't only me that had emailed the master coach or the coaching staff, because when I went over to watch Layla, there were like 2 or 3 other players from that same court that had come over with her. She was now with Coach Betty. I'm gonna send a shout out. I gotta send a shout out to Coach Betty because she is a beast. She plays 0 games with the players. She drove them to be their best. And she is definitely old school. We should have had Coach Betty day 1. She learned a lot on day 3.